So the call is called How to Use Psychology to Set Goals You Actually Achieve. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this today. Apologies for the technical inconveniences, but I guess you can look at my face and imagine what the slides say. They're just text slides. So we're talking about how to use psychology to set goals you actually achieve, because I found that, this is usually the missing ingredient that we take into account. And I am a productivity coach and have been for the last 8 years. I'm also a soon-to-be psychologist, and I'm creator of an online goal setting course, which I have created after a year of devouring research on goal setting, and that's what it is. Sorry guys, I'm a bit nervous because you can't see my slides. All right, basically, I have a background in coaching, which is practically getting people from point A to point B, right? They set a goal and they try to achieve it, and that's why they come to me. And then I also have the psychology background and kind of the science background, doing a master's in psychology. I've taken both those lenses to look at goal setting and what we can do to basically set ourselves up for success. Because kind of annoying fact and truth is that most of the goals we set for ourselves fail. There has been a very interesting study that I like quite a bit that said that only 28% of goals by action. So only about a third of the goals we set make it from paper to, putting on running shoes for the first time. And then out of those few goals that actually make it to the, of course, the majority of those aren't achieved either. And that sucks, right? We're setting goals and we're doing so best faith. And a few months in, usually, if someone was, they'd usually be right if they said you didn't achieve the goal, by March. And that sucks, right? And so that's why I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out why it is so hard to reach our goals and also what we can do about it. And I have turned to science for this, and I've actually read a whole bunch of studies and a whole bunch of research on goal setting, because it turns out there's actually decades of research on this. Researchers trying to figure out why some people reach their goals and other people don't reach their goals. And what I tried to do then with all of this knowledge and information overload was to take that and put that into a consumable format where we can actually, when we have the idea to sit down and work on a goal or set a goal, that we have a bit of a step-by-step format that follows those best practices that you can take out of all these papers and all this research, and that you can kind of get the knowledge out into the world. And so for that, I developed an online goal setting course, which is free and which I'll share a link to at the end of today's session. But before we go into any of that, I just want to go over a few things with you guys regarding kind of what makes a good goal and what that usually that I'm sure I'll find a way for you after the call. I'm just quickly having a look. Someone said that they can't hear me. Andrew said that. Is everyone else fine with my audio? Thanks, guys. That's helpful. Let's talk about what makes an effective goal. I've talked about, okay, we want to make sure that the goals we set for ourselves, actually have a chance at success, of actually being achieved. And so in my definition, what I was looking for as I did all this research was to try and understand what makes a goal effective. And for me, an effective goal is one that we actually follow through on. So a goal that when I set it on a piece of paper actually has a realistic survival chance in the real world. That's what I wanted to know. Like, what are the steps we need to take so that in this goal setting session, we have a really good chance of, coming up with something solid rather than kind of a dream on paper or an arbitrary goal that we never actually do anything with. So an effective goal kind of sets us up for success from the start. And if you think about it, following through on a goal, the process is always going to be messy, right? No one can know what life will be like in February. Maybe you get a huge promotion, maybe a new coronavirus comes up. You don't really know what comes up. So there's only so much planning we can do to be well prepared for what's going to happen. Or there's, that is always going to be a bit tricky to, actually work on the goal day in and day out. But nonetheless, if we set our goal, according to a few good best practices, we actually help it have a survival chance, and we help it, be a SMART goal, if you will. So before we talk a little bit more about kind of what the rough steps are to setting a good, effective goal, I wanted to talk to you guys about a few goal myths that I see on the internet, but also in books and all sorts of personal development and self-help advice that actually make me a bit angry because they're not helpful, but they're pretty common, and they actually make it harder for us to achieve our goals. So before we talk about the steps, I want to talk about the myths because we kind of want to get those out of our heads so that we actually, have a good chance of setting effective goals. So the first one that sometimes makes me very angry is this myth that if only I were more disciplined, I'd reach my goals. It's this whole idea that to be effective at goal setting, what we need is willpower and discipline and commitment. And if a person really wants to reach a goal, they'll automatically reach it. And oftentimes people feel like there's the disciplined people in the world, there's the not so disciplined people in the world. And if you fall into the not so disciplined category, you're basically screwed. We don't really want to use discipline, self-control, or willpower as our main way to get us to act on our goal. We want to set our goal as part of a system of habits that make it easier for us to, do the work day in and day out, rather than, just sit there every morning and say, today I'm going to go running, today I'm going to go. And then, you have to kind of rely on willpower to get up and do it. We don't want any of that. Willpower isn't particularly reliable. It's, used up relatively quickly. And so when we set a goal, we also want to set a whole plan around the goal to almost like automate good behavior for us. And understanding that to achieve a goal, you do not need more willpower. You basically need a good system. That is one of the key things that I found helps my coaching clients out a lot. And so the second myth that I guess goes hand in hand with the first one is that you kind of have to sacrifice to achieve a big goal. I've had a client say to me once that, basically he said, I guess I can't enjoy my life until I've achieved all these big things on my list. Like there is just no time for things like reading a book or meeting friends. And, there is no science supporting that if you try to work on your goal 24/7, you're going to achieve it. Actually, burnout, which would be a result of that, and a whole lot of frustration, is a surefire way to make it really hard for yourself to achieve your goal. So this whole idea of hard work is everything, you kind of have to put everything behind your big goal, and goal pursuit always has to feel like a struggle and like it takes a lot out of you. That is not true, because again, when we set our goal in a way that we have a proper system around it, our goal is, during goal setting, to make follow through as easy and enjoyable as possible for us, because that way we can persevere, over the coming weeks and months, rather than, relying on willpower and relying on our capacity to suffer to get us through to the end of our goal pursuit. So what we need to set a good goal is, like I said, a whole goal system. And what I've looked into a lot is how to figure out a process realistic goals kind of repeatedly, right? Whenever you want to set a goal, there are certain steps that you can follow that will make it easier for you. And I've put all of those things into the goal setting course I'm going to mention again at the end. But basically, just sitting down and writing an intention, like I want to be healthy or I want to be fit. That's a vague intention, which is great as a general direction, but it's not a goal. That's something people do a lot, and that doesn't work. Another thing we do a lot is we try to set a SMART goal because we've read somewhere that specific, measurable, all these things type of goals work. And so we then come up with, go to the gym 5 times a week at X o'clock and perform this specific set of exercises. That's usually what people associate with goal setting. And while those are kind of ingredients of a good goal setting process, they're not it, right? They're not the whole thing we need to do. So we want to have a process for choosing meaningful and realistic goals. We want to have a way to take a big vision and make that into a short-term goal, and then develop a realistic action plan around it so that at the end of the goal setting process, we actually have developed a whole system of habits that tell us what we need to do on Tuesday and on Wednesday, and just in the day-to-day of our lives to actually make sure that we are doing what we need to do to work on the goal. So the end result of a good goal setting session would be that you have a plan and that you know what you need to do repeatedly in the form of habits so that you can achieve your goal. And at the same time, your goal system also needs to be flexible so that if you realize after day 3 that a big chunk of it is just not working as you expected it to, that you can adapt and change a little bit and therefore persevere in the long run. So those are kind of roughly, I guess, the ingredients or the goals we would have for a good goal setting process into a free online goal setting course. I'm going to put the link into the chat in just a moment. It used to be on the slides. And then you guys can go check that out at the end of the call. The course is part of my master's thesis. In order to become a psychologist, I need to have a master's in psychology. And in order to do that, I need to, have a thesis project. And I decided to take all of the goal setting research that I could get my hands on and turn that into this actionable, I guess, handbook for you guys that you can use in the format of an online course. So I'll share the link in just a moment, and then I guess I'd be ready for questions now. If you want to shoot me a question in the chat, I'll go back and see if there are some there already, but I'm super happy to answer any questions you have about how do I choose the right goal? How do I make sure I don't set myself up for failure from the start? Yeah. Okay, so I might put the first question by Sanyam is how to know what we actually want, because we need something to aim. Good question. So there is a trillion goals that we could set every single year or every single moment of our lives. We could set fitness goals, we could set career goals. This is a tricky one. You're right that the one thing we want to do when we set a goal is we want to really make sure it's something that we want, that it's something we're intrinsically to do if we can help it, right? If we do have the choice. And to do that, I actually have a bit of a vision exercise in the course that helps us do that. But just quick is, if I am setting a goal for an entire year, like right now, I ask myself, if I could only describe 2021 in one sentence, in one word of 2021 was the year I did X. I asked myself what I would want that to be today, a year from now. If you look at 2020, you probably can sum up that year. I mean, pandemic and all, but you can sum up that year in a sentence. It was the year I moved to that place and I started that job, something like that. And I kind of turned that around and asked myself, okay, a year from now, what would I wish the answer to that would be? What is something that I always want to do and never get around to? And by asking yourself questions in the line of that, you have a higher chance of finding an intrinsically motivated goal, one that you actually care about. Because setting should goals, goals that we think sound smart, but that don't have very much to do with us, that's a surefire way to make our lives pretty complicated. So yeah, I'd say set a rough vision or a rough general direction at the start. Do your best to do gut checks to make sure that it's what you want, and then go further down in the goal setting process of making the goals more short term and more specific. Okay. Okay, another question is, what makes a goal actionable? Goal actionable is not necessarily how it's formulated. It doesn't necessarily have to be go running 3 times a week. It could be big in the beginning. It could be something like, I want to be healthier and I want to try out different ways of moving my body. Traditionally, a lot of people would say that's not a goal because it's not very specific. But if you're at the very beginning of figuring out what fitness goals you might even like to set, something like this can be quite helpful. So a goal that is actionable is not necessarily something that is super specific and super defined. Rather, it's something that you're actually going to do. And so that's sometimes a bit tricky to know ahead of time what you're going to do if you keep choosing fitness goals because most people have experience with those. But if you've never really worked out a day in your life, or you've never managed to set a workout habit, it's hard to know what form of exercise you might like, for example. So in that sense, whatever goal you can set that allows you to actually, tomorrow go out and try something, that would be an actionable goal. Okay, Sarah asked, what are some characteristics of the supporting system you were describing? So the supporting system, basically the rough framework I use for goal setting that will be in the course, is that there is a big vision goal, usually about a year long. Then there's a 3-month short-term goal that we're aiming for. And then we have the real system where the action happens, so the action plan. And that is a weekly habit of something that we want to do regularly. An activity that we say, okay, if I do this, I trust that I'll reach my 3-month goal, and I trust that I'll reach my 1-year goal. And then for that weekly habit, we have a bunch of supporting habits that just make it easier for us to actually do this key habit every week. So to make it easier, I guess let's say if I wanted to write a book this year, if that was my big 1-year vision, and my 3-month goal was just to, I don't know, written, however you would have defined that, then my weekly goal, something that I trust would help me make progress, would definitely be a writing goal, right? Something about the writing habit. And maybe for one person that is writing 500 words a day, for another person that's having a 3-hour writing session at a cafe every week. What that is going to be very different for each person, and you kind of have to go through the process and ask yourself a whole bunch of questions to find out what has the biggest chances of success for you. But let's say mine weekly habit would be write 500 words every day. And I'll be more specific and say 500 words every day after breakfast. Then I'd go in and ask myself, okay, what are some of the obstacles I foresee to me doing that? And maybe I know that I have a huge habit of going onto the internet for news. Then I need some habits that help me prevent doing that and make it more likely for me to actually use whatever app I need to use to write my book. So you have the output that you want every week, and then you have habits. Their sole goal is just to make falling through easy and enjoyable for you. So that's rough. So Sherilyn asked, you mentioned the myth that a goal requires sacrifice, enough time to, because inevitably the goal does take time. That seems inevitable. Why is this a myth and how do we overcome it? Okay, I understand from for sure. So of course, when we set a goal, if we didn't set a goal, we would probably have more time to see our friends, right? But if we set a goal that is going to take time every day, that's true. But I guess a lot of the times when we set a big goal, let's say I wanted to write a book this year. This was super important to me, huge goal, and I anticipate that that is going to take hundreds and hundreds of hours of me writing. Of course, I'm going to have less time to see people and have free time. But what I don't want to do is say, no, 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 no. The only thing I can do is write this book and nothing else. Because if I do that, then I'm just going to burn myself out. So I guess the myth here is that, the more time you put into something and the harder you work at the expense of everything else, the better it is for your goal. Whereas I have found that if a person can set a goal that actually fits into their lives and leaves a little bit of wiggle room for them to do other things and have a life around it, that is actually really beneficial. I am a productivity coach, I guess, by trade. And one of the main things I do with my clients to help them build sustainable getting things done habits is to not just build the focus, sit down, do the work habits, but also to build, a mindset around that allows them to see that, hey, I probably do need to allow myself free time and enjoyment, because if I don't, then I'll just procrastinate more and I'll feel burnt out. So that was what that was about. I hope that clarified it a little bit. And then Sanyam asked, is it good to set goals in multiple domains like health, financial, career, social, all at once? The simple answer is no. There is such a thing as goal focus, is what researchers call it. And when we set a new goal, our brain will require some resources for that, right? Our attention, our time, it'll take energy, it might even take money. And so the more goals people set, they them. So what I would recommend is if you sit down and really set goals for yourself, try to for the foreseeable future. Tell yourself that you can set goals later on, more in other goals, but it is always easiest when you only have one big goal, when you're trying to change one big thing in your life. If you want to set two, because I know I would advise selecting goals that are very different. So you can, for example, have a health goal and a work goal, because the work goal requires maybe concentration and certain skills, but the health goal, I guess, almost requires a different kind of energy. So the further apart, the less similar the goals are, the easier it is for your brain to juggle both. And there's research behind that as well. So if you set a goal to write a book for your career and to also, I don't know, advance in your current job, I'd say that's probably key, because those are closely related, and it will usually be in either energy and concentration. You will in some ways have to choose between those two goals. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Make those goals very different from each other. And what you can do though is have a bunch of play goals on the side. That is what I do. So I'll have silly little goals like, I don't know, bake sourdough bread or practice on the slack line and practice balancing, because those things are fun and there's not much, I guess, willpower needed for those. There's not much strategy needed for those. I'm just doing them out of fun. So you can still play around and change different areas of your life. But what I wouldn't recommend is trying to do to move mountains in different areas of your life. All right. So I think we have around 3 minutes left. So let me see what Andrew said for our last question. Do you think that fully committing yourself to a goal requires discarding other pursuits that don't contribute to your goal as helpful? If you have the goal to get a PhD, if something won't lead you there or to other goals, it's not worth doing. Benjamin Hardy was advocating something like this. All right, so I would say again, it comes down to how big your goal is and how similar your different goals are. So if you have the goal to get a PhD and you also want to start a business at the same time, which I mean, to someone on the outside usually sounds like that's definitely too much, but we ourselves can convince ourselves that it's all doable and we can make it work because we have so many hours in the day and it'll all work out fine. Yeah, if you have a big goal that is pretty new to you, that needs a lot of your attention, it's definitely a good idea to disregard or to, try and cut some other things, cut yourself some slack with other goals in your life. That's definitely true. I don't think, however, that you need to stop everything else in order to have a realistic shot at your goal. So for example, one of the times when this whole goal setting system had worked really well for me was when I said as my 1 year big goal, I set a goal to go to CrossFit twice a week, which is a high intensity, very sweaty workout. And I came from a background of never having worked out regularly in my life. But I knew I liked CrossFit because I had tested that. And I actually managed to achieve that goal and to go twice a week by having this habit system we talked about and that in the course. And that worked out. And I also, in the same year, in my business, I did a trillion other things. But my main goal every week, the one thing I definitely made sure didn't slip through the cracks was, going to CrossFit. And yeah, I also had some business goals that I was kind of pursuing, but because those two were very different, they required very different things from me, that worked out. All right, so let me just share the link to the in the chat. I haven't done that yet. So the link is subscribepage.com/goal course. Subscribe page. I'll also type that up for you guys. If I can, subscribe. Oh, no, autocorrect. Subscribepage.com/goal course. Thank you. Thank you, Brigitte. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, basically you guys can go to that page and get access to the course as soon as it launches. It should launch in January. It takes you through the whole process of finding the vision, setting the goals, everything that I said, you need to have that in your goal setting system. All of that is in that course. It's a free course. And it's part of a research project for my thesis. So everyone who participates will also be contributing to psychological research, which is always highly appreciated. Thanks, guys, for your kind words. I really apologize for the tech hiccups. Yeah, there's that. But I will do my best to figure out how to get the slides to you. And yeah, thank you guys for being here, and I'll let you get on with your days. Bye, guys.